For CJLO Radio, this is Yael Osaski with Liberty in Exile.
Fellow South Africans, I greet you all in the name of peace, democracy, and freedom for all.
And now, my fellow countrymen, I take you to my closing remarks. We end this week in a time so cold and questionable. Scattered in all parts of a planet owned by no one and everyone, we seek shelter from the bitter winter storms that leave our fingers numb, our noses as fountains, and our hearts as hopeful benefactors of warmth. Our star plays with our minds, feeding us with its power, but only hours at a time. And as that star, our sun, provides life from over 93 million miles out, a hierarchy of species destroys life at home. The most just and free societies spend their time killing off competing cultures and peoples, robbing a virtuous existence from the inhabitants of where life began. How wondrous it is that the cradle of the three most popular religions of the world has become a nesting ground for violence, hate, and war. The tentacles of imperialism sink deep into the mountains and deserts and guarantee the existence of hostility and separation for generations. Instead of seeking to understand them, we have allowed elected men to unload tons of ammunition to keep the wartime economy afloat. Powerful vested interests have infiltrated our halls of government and the seeds of our conscience. We are reminded constantly of our democracy and freedom, while we struggle to comprehend the chains that bind us to this reality. It is as if we are trapped in a gerbil's wheel, unable to stop, yet able to see the glass frame that encaptures us. We drink only from the plastic bottle of water that allows us to survive, because that is all we've been trained to do. If only we could see the path to liberty. If only we were to free ourselves from the glass enclosure imposed on us by a society, perpetuated by the propaganda of the media that assures us connection, and the governments that brainwash citizens with nationalism and petty differences. If only we could step away from the two opposing philosophical sides, kept apart by general vernacular and extremism in hate of the other side. The trick of keeping your society at arms with one another dates to the Roman Empire, begetting the all-too-familiar phrase, divide and conquer. But the lessons of Rome do not run astray from the present. We live in a constant battle of ideals concocted and conceived by the same men that pull the puppet strings. Oh, you and I have heard our fathers say, there was a citizenry once that would have brooked the eternal devil to keep his state in Rome as easily as a king. Until that time, when the populace exposes the sham of the elite and frees humanity from all binds, we bring you Liberty in Exile, every Friday at 10 a.m. on CJLO. I'm your host, Yael Osaski, reminding you to garner your happiness, as you are the only one to hold the key. Enjoy your weekends, and the words from Edward R. Murrow.
Had he looked 3 lines earlier in Shakespeare's Caesar, he would have found this line, which is not altogether inappropriate. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. No one familiar with the history of his country can deny that congressional committees are useful. It is necessary to investigate before legislating. But the line between investigating and persecuting is a very fine one, and the junior senator from Wisconsin has stepped over it repeatedly. His primary achievement has been in confusing the public mind as between the internal and the external threats of communism. We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We must remember always that accusation is not proof, and that conviction depends upon evidence and due process of law. We will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason if we dig deep in our history and our doctrine and remember that we are not descended from fearful men, not from men who feared to write, to speak, to associate, and to defend causes that were for the moment unpopular. This is no time for men who oppose Senator McCarthy's methods to keep silent, or for those who approve. We can deny our heritage and our history, but we cannot escape responsibility for the result. There is no way for a citizen of a republic to abdicate his responsibilities. As a nation, we have come into our full inheritance at a tender age. We proclaim ourselves, as indeed we are, the defenders of freedom wherever it continues to exist in the world. But we cannot defend freedom abroad by deserting it at home. The actions of the junior senator from Wisconsin have caused alarm and dismay amongst our allies abroad and given considerable comfort to our enemies. And whose fault is that? Not really his. He didn't create this situation of fear. He merely exploited it, and rather successfully. Cassius was right. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. Good night, and good luck.